Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Be My Own Boss podcast.
Hello, Steve. Hello, everybody.
With myself and Mr. Mike Karubi. And today, I know that many of you know I did a piece on the two pieces now on the Massachusetts thing because the week before last week, I did a piece on what had happened and transpired from all of this. And this week, I did a piece on what happened after that, which is Mike's going to get into in a little bit more detail. And hopefully, even guys, if you're hearing the word Massachusetts, don't tune out, because this applies to everybody. This doesn't just apply to the state of Massachusetts. In fact, it applies to could be any states, but I would safely say some states are more safe than others. But don't just think if you're a red state you're safe either. This is one to watch, because what they're doing there is absolutely upside down wrong, and goes against everything that we're doing. So I don't know, Mike, do you want to? I don't want to confuse people with just ABC tests, because sometimes then they start going, "Oh, that's that Prop 22 AB5 talk. I don't like that." So it's not, guys. If we mention ABC test, it does apply to many states. I mean, yes. We have it in our language, and
yep. So about half the states in some form or another, ABC, A and B, B and C, AC, one of the three. And it's fairly common, and we're going to be going into it, here on the Be My Own Boss podcast. But for now, what we need to talk about urgently, because we need to get the attention of drivers and independent contractors and passengers and clients of what's coming, because Massachusetts wears 10-league boots in independent contractor law. So it's worth paying attention to. I know we're a little state. We got a lot of brick. We got lobster and chowder. And this is way worse than the lobster and the chowder, by the way. So what I'm calling it is the the Boston Massacre of 2024, because Massachusetts, Boston, the city, this is a capital city here, in addition to a major port, has absolutely flogged the platforms, and by extension, all platforms and all clients and all independent contractors with this settlement. And it's a new form of law that people really aren't used to. They know about laws that are written by a legislature, and then there are court decisions usually around those laws, but they're not really aware that sometimes a law, a settlement of a court case can become a law, because that's what you have to follow in that state. So this is a big deal. There's no overdoing how important it is. And Steve and I could probably sit here for a week continuously, with bathroom breaks and time for barbecue, just talking about this bill, and it's worth listening to, but we're not going to make you listen to it. We're going to give you just a distillate so you can go on your way and think, those guys got it for me. So the first thing you got to know, and I'm sure you've heard, is the cash cost of this settlement to Uber and Lyft. It's $175 million. I don't think there is
and that's just for past.
That's just for past.
That's not even moving forward. That's just to play catch up, and it's
just to clear the fridge, right?
Yeah,
all the old party stuff. And now the Uber cost is let's see, what was that? 148 million cash by the end of the month. Right about now. That's 3% of Uber's total corporate cash gone. That's a board decision. Nobody walks down to the treasurer's office and says, I need $148 million. Make it out to the Attorney General of Massachusetts. Yeah, we'll see you later. No, this is a huge deal for Uber and Lyft. And they fought tenaciously for 4 years to avoid this, and then got hit with it anyway. That's a measure of the power of the ABC type labor law. We're going to go into that a lot, but you guys are going to be fully informed about what you need to know about the horribleness of what's coming down. Okay, now the second thing, this is just like headlines. The second thing is there's a long benefits menu of what's going to be mandatory benefits, and you know who's going to pay for them. You're going to pay for them, okay? And everybody, and so when you look at the whole list, I've been, remember, I was an employer for 20 plus years. I've been self-employed for 40 years. I know how to look at this from the different sides. I think what's important to know here is that this creates a new status in Massachusetts called dependent contractor. You haven't heard the term before. That's what they made up. They're talking about the third way. Well, the third way is a dependent contractor, and I'll tell you why. All the benefits that you're going to get and all your pay is going to go through the state of Massachusetts and their apparatus. Okay? The first thing, the little thing to know, and they will tell you a lot, there's a minimum hourly payment. It's like a minimum wage, $32.50 an hour. What? Amazing. That's wonderful. And then something like 30 pages more of what is going to come out of that 32, either directly or indirectly. So don't spend it all, okay? Don't spend it yet. So $32.50 sounds big.
But
now, go ahead.
I want to just pause there for a second, because I've talked to enough drivers where literally every single one of them says, listen, if I'm not making more than 40 an active hour, not even $32.50, more than 40, I would stop doing this. For this, again, is market dependent. And this is for Boston.
Yep.
They've said, if I'm not going to make 40 an hour, I wouldn't do this. And that's active time without this rule. So $32.50 sounds like a lot, but it's, when it comes to active time, it's not.
I don't think it's going to get any better.
It would have been better just to leave it.
Well, I would say that about every line down here, but there's room for some people to say, geez, this is an improvement. But I think it's going to be the people that really don't know how to do the driving and don't know how to scope it all out and don't know how to, compare apps on the fly, on the way cross town in the rain, blockage in traffic on I-25, and here's the job I should take. I don't think they've got that yet.
But but even you've said that's we've talked about this. That's part of being an independent contractor, that you have a skill set that you have to offer that is better than somebody else's. So if you can't learn it quick enough, maybe you need to move on.
Yes, maybe this is not the business for you. Okay, so now we got the hourly payment, and then what they do is they say, well, we're going to pay you for driving to the ride once you've signed up for it, and between rides if you go from ride to ride. Okay, now that sounds like a good deal. And from a market, company management, accounting, that's really a marketing expense. You're going to go get the next job. So you can say that's a plus, but that is going to be the rule now. And you've taken out, that's going to be taken, that gives them the right to take money back from you. So I think it's a red herring. Later on, we'll talk about what this means in other platforms. Then, okay, so we've got this $32.50. You think, okay, $32.50, and I've got inflation going at 10 or 12% a year, depends on where you want to measure it. But 3 years of that is, like 35%. That'll bring it down to 32 to what? 30% off of that is like a bunch, 2021. Like 2021 is half of what Steve said, the people are telling him they want to work for. So this is like a down escalator, and you thought you didn't have to move your feet. Well, you don't. It's going to go down. And in order to get it up, there are three things. You've got an equation with three things. It's the lesser of two of them compared to the state minimum wage. And then you get the higher of those two, one being the lesser. So if the state minimum wage doesn't change, you get a maximum of 3%, or the actual, what was that? ... It's really clever. Or the increase in inflation. the less of
Mhm.
it. So if we get 10% inflation and no change in minimum wage, you're going to be making, you get you get inflation, you get the 3% instead of the inflation.
Right.
Okay. So, and everybody who was negotiating knew what that meant. So they're going to take it out of the drivers eventually. The drivers were lunch with, some poor lamb with 5 wolves sitting around the table deciding what's for lunch. Okay. Now that's the pay rate increase. It's a formula. It's not that they're Uber and Lyft are going to sit down with the drivers and start with a clean sheet of paper and say, okay, what do you guys got to have this year? No, there's none of that. The drivers don't even factor in. Okay, so that's the big thing. The pay increases come from an equation. Then there are 6 different forms of insurance that are going to be mandated. 6 different forms of insurance. And those are all coming out of your $32 minus a couple of other things. So this is a big.
Wait, what are 6? Why do I need 6 insurances?
Well, they're listed.
I mean, I don't, but why do they say I do?
Well, there's sick leave accrual. Okay.
Right.
That means you can get paid.
Yeah,
you get paid and don't go to work. All right. Guess who pays?
And they figured, right, they make that look like actually a present, but it's actually a negative.
It's not
That's
a present.
part of being an independent contractor. If you're going to be sick, it's on your time.
It's a loan. They take it back. It has a trip rate. It's like Verizon. You get to carry over your 5 gigs, except you can only carry over them a month in Verizon, and here you can't carry them past 40 hours a year. So that's gonna degrade. That's a asset that is somebody else has access to. Did you want to know the whole bunch? There's occupational accident insurance. There's accidental death insurance to your defendants.
Mm-hmm.
There's reasonable burial expenses. I have to tell you, I haven't had a burial expense. And you know what? I lived all 40 years without it. A little money in the bank, guys. Give it to your significant other, your bride, your groom, whatever. Give it to your kids. Say, here, if something happens bad, at least you can bury me.
I was laughing there, by the way, because we all know that even during the pandemic, when Uber and Lyft said that they would do things, and I hate to bag on this scenario, but they didn't do anything. Legal rideshare did more than that. I mean, there was a joke made about there were these people claiming these deaths during the pandemic, and they weren't getting any of the money Uber and Lyft was promising. If you drove, you got. And there was a joke made about like, well, maybe they'll just give you a shovel.
Right. each of the heirs. Oh, well, that is really kind. They're going to get one at Home Depot or Lowe's, really cheap that rattles. Okay. Now, so then the first one, so there's sick leave accrual. We talked about that. Occupational accident insurance for all years. You get up to $1 million benefit. Sounds terrific. You got really hit hard in that accident. And 156 weeks. That is a whole lot, like 3 full years. But it's at 66% of whatever you were making. So it might work out to almost nothing, and then you've got to be really near death's door to get all of it. So why don't you just get a real, drive an extra hour, buy your own, insurance policy so that you own it. That's water over the dam now. Okay, then there's a portable health fund. Half paid by the company and half paid by the driver out of that $32.50 an hour or whatever they're going to make. All right. And then there's last insurance was paid family and medical leave allowance, which is paid to the driver. You and I know what's going to happen. They just moved money from one of your pockets to the other and gave you a check for it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, I can't believe they're doing this. It all comes out of the $32.50. Can't imagine that the drivers are ahead, and they're doing this with a straight face. All right, so that's the big thing. Now, forever, as far as I could tell, I could not see a termination date in it, and I've read it 4 times. The Attorney General oversees the benefits and pay for this period. And I guess for all the new ones, because this is still in the purview. So you now have 2 bosses. You have, according to the accusations, you have Uber and Lyft because they say that you're your boss, but we'll get to that. and you have the attorney general. So those are, I don't know, possibly not the most responsive people you want with your pay and benefits. They're not very.
I mean, look, I mean, their track record. If it actually goes if it went all the way to a W-2, all these people who claim that that's what they want, they wouldn't work for Uber or Lyft.
No,
they'd go move on to a different job. And which my point is, just do it now then.
Yeah.
But I want to, before you move any farther forward, I do want to read this because this was a comment that was put on by somebody I know very well who has extremely good comments. I'm gonna give him a shout out. It's at Mike Drop Barbecue. He's in Arizona. His name is Jeff. He said the reason for so he's talking about the active hour after 2 weeks is a trick because they're going to pay you every 2 weeks for that active hour time if you go under the 3250. And this is what he said, and I wanted your response on this, Mike. The reason for the 2 weeks is because of payroll. For W-2s is typically calculated for 1 week, which is the week before the actual week you're paid. They're basically adjusting hours and moving things in the system around. Pay attention to your active hours by logging the data yourself. These apps are manipulating the data because most drivers don't do their own bookkeeping. They trust the app. And anyone that's processed payroll before knows this. You can edit the data hours to get the numbers where you want. We used to call it a docking party or docking pay. The apps will be docking drivers who aren't keeping track of their hours. Watch, they'll owe more, but adjust you down and give the illusion that you've worked less and made more. Any comment on that?
Yes, I believe that all that I know of in that appears to be factually correct.
Okay.
I think the Massachusetts they're being treated like yes.
Oh no, I was just saying hi to Lynn.
Okay. Right. They're being treated like employees with that biweekly thing. Maybe their alibi is, well, that way you get your pay regularly. Well, if Uber and Lyft and all the other platforms aren't paying you regularly, you got a way bigger question than when you get it. You know, if they're not living up to any agreement and then you may not have an agreement and the whole thing just goes down the toilet. So the rest of his comments I thought were pretty accurate. So I think he understands. There apparently, from what everybody says, there's manipulation going on. If there isn't, then there's terrible communication going on.
Mm-hmm.
Because normally, if you were a manufacturer, you'd start picking that up immediately. You have people literally at the desk down the hall watching social media every day to see if they can pick off why the light bulbs don't work when they buy them at Lowe's. I mean, they're two sides of the party watching that. There's Lowe's and Home Depot, and you can't let it run. So I think this issue is so huge. If people don't trust the app, it's got to be at least half because of the app, because I don't think 300,000 or whatever drivers are fundamentally crooked and complaining, and they're driving for Uber and Lyft in Massachusetts. I just don't think that.
I think I don't know where they come up with those numbers anyway. From what I can see, it's like 10 or 12 that gather to, and I'm not talking 10 or 12,000. I'm talking 10 or 12 people that gather to
crankies. Yes, and they're probably paid as by who.
Yeah,
they're paid to be cranky. People don't work when they're cranky, and anyway. The last thing I saw that was really important was that after Uber and Lyft gave up their 5 or 6 different alternative ballot questions, like Prop 22, in other words, get the voters to approve independent contractor status for the app drivers.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. It worked out in California, although a lot of people hated it. The drivers were fine with it. Here, the AG got them to take them out of the submission file. The platforms take their ballot questions out of the submission file, and then after this became effective, she approves the unionization ballot question, and everybody thought that the deal was that no, both sides were going to take, not resort to the ballot. So the Attorney General of Massachusetts in public double-crossed the platforms, Uber and Lyft, and talked about what a wonderful thing unions are for drivers. And I think that is terrible. It's bad optics. It's immoral. It's irresponsible of somebody in that position to say, I'm in charge of all ballot questions and we're going to deal with everything impartial. Oh, and by the way, surprise, it's Tuesday and I think the unions are absolutely fantastic. No, let's just wait a second. What did she just do here? She weighed them and she pulled one off and said, oh, this one wins. Ha ha, it's the one I wanted. Ha ha ha. So it makes you wonder about Andrea Joy Campbell.
Yes.
Where is she getting her ethical sensation? In some ways, this has nothing to do with drivers at all. This has to do with running a statewide office with infinite funds to fight anybody they want. They wrist wrestled two of the largest companies in the country to an absolute shocking, ending that will never end. There's no termination of this. This is forever.
She's the East Coast Lorena Gonzalez.
She's worse.
She's winner.
Good,
but buddy. But see, listen, so here's Ron from Massachusetts. We've had Ron submit a video. That one. He's saying, so I can drive 16 hours a day in Massachusetts for Uber and Lyft at $32.50, 6 days, $31.20 a week, $5.20 a day. But Ron, that's active time. Can you do 16 active hours? Because my guess is if you're on the platforms for 16 hours, I don't know how much you'd be active, but also, you can't do 6 days a week at 16 hours. You could, but you'd burn out so fast it would.
Yeah, you'd be. But there are guys who do that.
Right, I know. I know a lot of them. But but my point is even at that, I don't think you're going to be active the entire time.
I don't think it's possible, unless you've got some way to, go east and west at the same time on the,
And if it does become possible, if it is possible, my guess is as soon as August 1st hits and this goes into law, if people hear that that's what's happening, you're going to see oversaturation like you've never seen.
Oh, we're going to have guys coming in from Wyoming. So I'm going to get myself some of that 3250.
Yeah. Well, you have New York now locking drivers out.
That's just a gross, Steve. I don't doubt he said he can do that, but how long can he do it? And yet he's grossing $3,000 6 days, 3,000 a week.
He says he can do 10 to 12 active on 16 hours. He can do about 10 to 12 active
on auto accept. Well, good for him.
But see, my question is, Ron, do you not make that already? Because most people, everyone. I talked to 5, and they're veteran drivers, and they're all in Boston. But in Boston, they tell me that they won't turn the car on if they're not making 40. So that's already $7.50 above what they're saying what they're going to pay you.
I'm not arguing with Ron. I think if he can do it, that's
the whole thing about this is the hustle. If Ron can do it, sweet.
I'm inclined to expect that,
but this isn't needed. I don't know.
What Ron describes in business terms is legitimate. Guys with a family who are forced into bankruptcy and don't have any, and they have expenses, and everybody's got to eat. Mm-hmm. They do this. I've done that myself. I'll do anything I can to support my family if I don't have a job. I've been there. I know that feeling that gets that behind what Rob is saying. I can do this. I just don't have to sleep 8 hours every night. After a year, you're just a basket case. But you can often recover from a hole in there. But you've got all your other expenses and taxes. $150,000 has huge taxes in Massachusetts, plus federal. So, you're killing yourself for the government basically, and at that level. But more power to you if you can bring in. I'm not questioning Ron. I'm actually asking Ron though what he is making right now at those same hours.
That's what I'd really be interested in. Again, I don't, even if it's like 2,000 instead of 3,600, I still am totally against what they're doing here.
I welcome anybody to put their comments in the.
Oh yeah.
I think that we're going to do more in this series,
because he also earlier commented, and Ron's a good guy. I mean, I watch his videos too. He's got a channel on YouTube, but he says, what about Mass Health?
That's actually in that's it. That's one of the programs. It's a contribution towards Portable Health Fund. That's for the administrator. The apps pay 50% by the company for the lowest mass connector exchange, or 100% if they're averaging, the drivers are averaging 25 hours per week of combined engagement time. That's specifically in the agreement.
Okay, so here, I guess here's his answer. I throttled my driving since now I have a small child. So yes, those 16-hour days, I think he meant, are gone. So I shoot for $1,500 a week to help with my new child.
Ron, my hat's off to you.
Yeah.
Love you, guy. Thank you. Thanks for taking care of that little kid. Love him. I love her.
But so obviously he's doing less hours though too. Here's my thing, guys, is that look at the other part that we didn't even mention yet is that in every state they've tried anything like this, and this is the hardest core one we've seen. Immediately the first thing Uber and Lyft do is raise the price on the customers. Yep. It does cause dramatic decrease in rides, and it has actually, they call it micro transit now, which is you think it used to mean something else, but now what it means is instead of taking Uber from your house to work, you take it to the train, and then you take the train to work. So you're using two modes of transportation because you can't afford the one anymore. And then it slowly starts dying off, and then you get the oversaturation. Your active time starts becoming way less than it is now. In every state, they've implemented this stuff. The drivers who go out for, let's just keep it even, 10 hours, and maybe they were having 80% active time. Like in most of these states, they're getting 60 at best now. I mean, I'm just going off the stats of California and Seattle and, some of New York City. I mean, New York City's locking out drivers. And in fact, in New York City, when they lock out drivers, somebody sent me a screenshot. It says you can move to another market if you want, because we just don't have the space, or some kind of weird thing that the thing they're putting up like that. What do you think they're going to do? They're going to go to Boston.
Yeah. Again, get me some of that good 3250.
Yeah. I mean,
all the strings that are attached to it. You're going to spend all your time trying to figure out if you're getting your deal from Uber or Lyft and the Mass Attorney General. You should be out there doing figuring out how Ron is doing this and doing getting your own drift,
Exactly. Ron is a true independent contractor, though. Ron hustles. Yes. He knows where to work. Like we were talking about earlier, you maybe not everybody's suited for this. Ron knows what to do.
I agree.
But I mean, the other problem here is that like you said, you got all this deal being made with the Attorney General, and then they remove all these proposals, and all of a sudden she jumps on board with the unions. There's nothing locking Uber and Lyft into staying.
None. And if they see unionization, they're going to go, what?
They'll leave, because I mean, that was the deal. We'll stay. Here's the deal. We don't like it, but here's the deal that we'll take.
Right. But it's just going to come back.
But the only thing they got out of it was you can't unionize. So the next day she turns around and says, oh, you can unionize, or let's vote for you to unionize. I mean, if she really thinks they'd go, oh, okay, we'll stick around for that. She's crazy.
This is a trouble damages state. So whatever they don't tell you anything about this. We're going to talk about, maybe in the next episode, we're going to talk about the anatomy of ABC labor law and how this stuff works. They were facing a much bigger fine, and they worked it down to this with these concessions underneath here. This was not the top line. I would say more like 350 million is my guess, and it could have been higher, because they add everybody up. They take all the benefits like this. This is how they calculated the benefits. They assign them to a driver. They do a giant spreadsheet and they triple it in the end. After all of this stuff is tripled, easily 350, 400 million. That is a fractional billion. You can do the math yourself. It's unbelievable what they were exposed to. And the platforms are loving being able to reduce it. And all they have to do is raise prices and, take on a bunch more drivers and let inflation, like everything else, let inflation buy them out of this. It's really too bad.
I mean, don't forget either. Uber, every other state they've done it in, Uber and Lyft puts a little first of all, they jack the fees. They use this as a great reason to jack the fees, but then they add a line item that says Massachusetts legislation BS charge, and they show it to the customer, and they'll put like $5-10 on every ride so that the customer knows part of this is this.
And Ron says that the trick is that all trips are to start in Massachusetts. Yeah, we got a lot of border here. There's New Hampshire coming down and Rhode Island coming up.
Well, I mean, that'll also cause problems too, because like Ron said, people will avoid taking trips out of the state then.
Yeah. Right.
They'll say, I don't want to go out of the state because then the one I pick up coming back isn't going to be on this active time thing, and it's not going
to it'll be something else. So they've got all these different currencies. Meanwhile, the thing to do is to try to get a strategy like, the guys who have talked about having a strategy in those the testimonials. By the way, we're running long, but I just wanted to say that we are still open on Dropbox and Vloggy for people who want to comment on why they are independent contractors.
Yeah, guys, that is slowed a lot. I'm going to just shoot you from the hip. It's slowed too much. We need to get that back up, because when we first started it, I mean, you guys were booming them in. We really like, if you guys are listening and you haven't done one, like Ron has, Tony's in here, he has, Ellen's in here, she has, let's see, Chris Taylor's in here, he has, Carnifage, you haven't. Let's see you do one. Come on, Carnifage, come through for us.
You guys are great, by the way. You're good actors. You've got nice theater timing. We're dying to put up more of these. Let's get them in. And you got the whole nation is going to be watching, and you guys are the lead artists in the performance in favor of being independent contractors. What the unions and the government regulators, who are, I repeat myself, they're trying to wipe out independent contracting completely. So that driving for Uber is going to be, you got to sign up, you got to apply, there's going to be a delay, they're going to take somebody else because you're not the preferred driver. And then you're going to have to, like Boots said, we're going to have to go to the bathroom when they say it's time to go to the bathroom.
So we're in triple overtime. We got to go. But here's the last question I have for you, Mike. This has been a major fight in Massachusetts for a long time. Dana, who who also made a video for us, he lives in Boston. He was the one that I think I even told you a few weeks back said, if it doesn't happen this year, it's not ever going to happen. That's my take. And he's always been very political about this stuff. And he said, this is the end. And this is before any of this happened.
The end of what?
He just said, this is going to be the final battle. Either it happens this year or it doesn't happen.
What?
All this push that just happened.
Oh, well, there is no end game for the unions other than winning completely. So we got to fight. There are ways to do it. Your video is the first step, is to get more drivers, more independent contractors of all sorts involved, because guys, we have what we need to move it our way, but we can't do it with a bunch of guys asleep in the hammock. So it's the first step in gaining clout. Clout's another thing we're going to talk about. Clout for you guys, not me.
So you guys smack that like. Make sure that you go over and subscribe to, if you're watching on Rideshare Rodeo, make sure you go over and subscribe to Mike's channel as well. This is the all you got to do is put the @Be My Own Boss podcast into search in YouTube. You'll be taken right to it, or go in the show notes. It's in there. You can just click it and make sure you subscribe over there too. And you're watching over there and you like, because we're trying to kind of momentum over to there too. So,
Chris Taylor, thanks for the Dropbox upload, everybody. Chris has got it in there.
Yeah. You guys, we are absolutely out of time. We got questions coming in, and
yeah, we'll put them in. We'll read them. We'll read them and resume.
Yeah. So if we don't ever get to your question, that's a good point. After the fact, put it in the comments, and we'll put it for next week. We can actually start off with any comments that we're not. And if you're watching this on the replay, leave your comments, and we'll read them first. So, but Mike, yeah, we're in triple overtime now. I think we're about to be beheaded. So thank you guys for joining us.
Thanks,
that just flew by. There's just so much to talk about. Like Mike said, we could do this forever.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
But
hey, it's 73 million people's job, and yours and mine. Okay.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Be My Own Boss podcast, episode number 10. And a couple things before I introduce Mike here, but number one, remember, this is the last one. After this, guys, we will be live on both channels, so it's time to subscribe if you haven't to the other channel. You got to subscribe to the Be My Own Boss podcast channel, because after we're done with every live we do on Monday, they will always be up over there. The other ones on this side will be put onto the members page, and I will put a community post up leading you guys to that one, because we want to build up that channel. So if you are watching on the replay, make sure that you're watching over there. Also, I put up a community poll in the chat asking you guys, because those of you who have been watching, you know that we titled this, that we're on part 2 of a part 6 series, and we already titled it The Boston Massacre. So after this last weekend and the events that took place, the poll is saying, do you guys think that we should change that name? Both Mike and I are kind of torn on this, because it was a great name for what we're doing, but both of us can also see why it might not be great at this time to continue with that. And we also don't want to appear clickbaity, because there's a lot of people putting out that kind of stuff in titles right now where it just doesn't belong. So anyway, thank you for joining us. And host here, Mr. Mike Karubi.
Thank you, Steve.
And Mike, welcome. And so last week our title was, because we covered it in full, what was the title for last week's?
The Boston Massacre. Good question.
I mean, I know what we covered. I'm just trying to think.
How
I caught us off guard.
First one is ABC Boston, just the Boston Massacre 2004. Uber and Lyft. Yeah. And then this one was ABC, goes into the anatomy. So
right, and this one also, what was the other title that we had that you came up with?
This was the murder weapon.
The murder weapon.
This is how they do it, and that's true. I mean, they're trying to kill careers. Yeah, completely. So yeah. So welcome, Traveler. Welcome, Kevin Hawthorne. Welcome, Jose. I see you guys jumping in here. I see some others lingering and looming. Feel free to jump into the conversation, please. Hi, guys.
And welcome. So, Mike, the murder weapon. A quick story of what we talked about last week was, it was kind of the effect, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good way to put it. And now we're going to talk about the cause.
Specific mechanics. How did the state set up something that trapped companies those big and those sophisticated into being guilty of something? What I hear, Steve, is that people say Uber and Lyft must be really guilty of something terrible to have to pay a fine that big. I mean, you could literally blow up on a nuclear reactor, in operation, and in the power grid, and they wouldn't fine you that much. So
I know there's some veterans out there listening and watching right now. I see some of you in the chat. What do you guys think? I was asking Mike about this. Do you think Uber will pay this $175 million? They do have until January 1st, I believe.
Yes.
So I was saying to Mike, I feel like that's a long time to give Uber to wiggle out of something, even if it is you must pay it. I feel like that's to me, I would say you have to pay me I'd make a judge and my lawyer and everybody say, make it tomorrow, because otherwise I don't trust them. You know, I mean, that January date's just so far out. There's just so much time to go, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I guess, like you said, it's a judgment. It's separate of everything else, but I still just they do things that we've never seen other companies do before, and they're global, and they have a lot of wiggle room, and they have a lot of power too, because they can leave. And I guess we'll get into that. So I guess let's properly use this time and jump in, because there's a lot to cover today, right?
Yeah, there is, but it's all something. It's something that everybody can grasp, and they need to, because this is the weapon that is designed specifically to end their careers. These are going to career killers. I've been through this with the Sarbanes-Oxley Act in my own business 20 years ago. Guys, it is murder. Let me tell you, when they take your business from you, you don't have a backup, and you don't have a backup after that. So how does this work? And so we thought today we would talk about the ABC law. I'm calling it ABC labor law. It's not really a test, it's more of a trap, but that we're going to talk about that trap part next week. But the ABC law works.
Well, and let me just interject to everybody before you jump in, because again, guys, if you're thinking, oh, they're talking about that ABC Massachusetts thing again, this ABC can exist anywhere. We said it last week. I think it's probably good that we say it every week, because
it's coming.
Don't think we're just talking about Massachusetts. This can easily relate to your state.
The plan is to bring it into all states, and they're starting with the blue states because they can waltz it in under cover of night very quickly. But it's their plan that it's going to, one way or another, it's going to be national law, and you're going to have to deal with it, which means you're going to have to do something else with your life. So the foundation of this law is a trick. It says that all individuals who are working in services are employees. Now, you know that's false, and it's just not true. Yeah. And yet that's the assumption in law. I mean, it's written. Mm-hmm. It's not a maybe. That is the law in Massachusetts, 90 words. And it's really false in 2024, because almost half the country, 40 plus, makes some sort of income working as, independently, contracting for work. Lots of things. There's over 600 occupations we've counted that you can, and people are contracting. So by setting up and saying that something exists, the defendant, which is like Uber and Lyft in these cases, has to prove a negative. You have to prove that they're not an employee. And of course, I think everybody knows you can't actually prove a negative, because there's always one more thing that could be brought up. So Uber and Lyft, and basically a stand-in for all businesses and individuals who use independent contractors, have to prove that they're not employees. And the ABC test gives them a little test. Okay.
So should we relate this to the federal one, where it's because like the ABC in California was just point blank, you're all done. But the federal one is very elusive. It's like you could have one, you and I could both be Uber drivers, go into the room one at a time and have different results.
That might be, but to my knowledge, California took ours, and I think they put in a person instead of an individual, or the worker. And there's a reason for that. That's a trick too. And then the PRO Act took California's and repeated it. Some of the newer states that are trying to put this in, the blue states, they are also using the Massachusetts wording. So that we're going to go over that, because it's so clear. And when you think about it, and anybody can understand this, but nobody takes the time, because they figure that they do understand it. And I'm saying Uber and Lyft got caught with this, not that they're doing something bad, but they're doing something that had a long tail and a huge penalty attached to that tail. So the ABC word, the meaning of it is that there are three prongs, like a fork. There's a left, the middle, and the right of a fork. And each one of these is talked about in sort of a verbal shorthand. And the shorthand, I could, for the people on Spotify, I can say that it's pretty easy to follow. The first prong A, talks about something called freedom of direction and control. Free of direction and control. And that, okay, so that's you can't control, you can't direct. I'm not sure what's the difference, but okay, fine. You can't be a busybody and act like a boss and pass this test. Okay, then there's an and. Now, when you get to law, every word counts. Same with a patent. When you get every word counts. So after the A test, we're going to add what comes later, and that's the B test. And this is where the action is. B test, the short phrase is, you got to be working outside the usual course of the business. Okay.
And this is the killer.
This is the likely, but they didn't say likely is the killer for almost all Massachusetts victims, like, who are employers.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna come back and break that one down. Then there's another and. So this is a triple test, but they add them. It's not like if you can pass one, you can add it.
Well, Mike, wouldn't you add to the fact that every driver is being hurt by the B test too? When you said that the employers are being affected, but every driver is too.
Yes, right. But
okay.
The law studiously ignores the drivers. It uses them like we're analyzing these little pawns on the board. They're not human beings. They don't have wishes. They don't have volition. They don't have ambition. They're just like a little plug-in thing that works on an assembly line, and we're going to deal with them that way. They never get to speak in this. No one can speak out in the regulatory process, enforcing this law. If you're a seller, no, we'll decide what your relationship is with your boss, not your relationship with yourself or with your work. Okay.
But you even just said it with your boss. Which till now isn't the case. They're not your boss.
And then
so do you have to be hired first now too?
Well, they're looking at the penalty part is entirely retro. No, none of them were hired. That's
right.
They were never asked to be employees, and they don't want to be that by and large. So then there's an and. So we're still adding stuff up, and then we've got this third provision, which is shorthand phrases customarily engaged. And the first thing you thought of, you'll think of is, what is customarily and what is engaged? Like if I work a little bit now and then, am I engaged? And what is customarily? Is it okay to moonlight? And what does that mean? And then there are more words, but customarily engaged is the shorthand for the third prong. So that's the three things. So you think, okay, I sort of understand those. Let's just go do the work, and we'll figure it out later. There won't be any problem because I'm voluntarily working, and the client knows I'm voluntarily working. Okay, that's all set. It's at this point that I think long ago, Uber and Lyft got caught, and they weren't doing anything. I think they got caught not completely understanding the difficulty they were in already in Massachusetts. Complete speculation. It's not in the agreement. It's not in the news releases. They'll never tell either of us, you, me, or our audience. They'll never tell us what actually happened. But you have to guess. You have to use your best business judgment about what's going on here. So if we break down each of these prongs, yeah, I know. If it weren't so terrible, it'd be a riot. The first prong, right, which is one test, is actually 4 undefined phrases, and you have to pass all of them. And I can say these very quickly. Most of you will remember them. Free of direction. That means, I guess, that they can't tell you how to do the job. Free of control, like they can't tell you to come and do it at 10 o'clock in the evening because we've got a flood and you got to do this right now. And then, so those two things under the contract has to provide it. Lots of work is done without a contract. It shouldn't be, but maybe it is. Maybe you just had a regular contract. Anyway, under the contract. So they're going to look at the wording that protects it. And then here's the magic in this one, in fact. So not only are they going to look at the contract, they're going to make sure that you have none of these things in fact. This is a purity test. And nobody passes purity tests. You just can't.
No, I'm already thinking of stupid things where they've already had control that they're removing them even more. Like, okay, do I want to use Waze, Google Maps, or Apple Maps to get Mike to the airport doing rideshare?
Right.
And which way is correct?
Right. And if I use
like, which one are they using so that I don't use it, so that I'm not under the control of what I don't know.
Yeah, it'll drive you nuts. Yeah, literally, this is like a drain, and you just go down it, and there is no up. It's just, but you have to understand this. It's important for independent contractors to understand this weapon, because in the long run, we've got to get rid of it as it affects us. We can leave it in place, but we can get around it. And that's what we're here talking about today. We're eventually going to get around this. Let's go to prong B. We've got 2 phrases. Now we've got 4 phrases in a 3-part test, okay, that you have to pass. And they're undefined. They don't have any particular meaning. The fun thing is the 2 undefined phrases in prong B, which use the same word twice. Like, how the hell? Well, let's study it. Let's plunge in. The first phrase that's undefined is the usual course of business. This is not what people talk about in business. What's the usual course of business? Like, no, business is a problem. Any business is a problem-solving machine, and they don't talk about it. They just like, what's the problem? How can we solve it? Let's move on, because, we're going that direction. Then the second phrase is the business of the employer. And they use the word business twice, but it has 2 test meanings. All right. Now, let's take these in reverse order, because the first phrase modifies the second, the business of the employer. I can guarantee you business spends billions of dollars every year in aggregate trying to figure out what their main business is, because they need to tell their investors, they need to make investments, they need to focus their corporate skills, they need all their people to giving all their attention to our main business, and then they get rid of everything else. And a lot of that everything else is what they seek independent contractors for, is they don't want to train people, they don't want to hire them, they don't want to send them on vacation, they don't want to have this giant apparatus of a couple of buildings worth of people they would rather not have. They just don't want them. And that's where one of the reasons independent contracting has grown. It's outside what the business wants to focus on. So that's the background. So anything in this prong that Uber and Lyft are, guilty of to the Labor Department of Massachusetts, that's not acceptable. You can't, okay.
This is why Uber used to love that classification wherever they could get it of, we're a tech company. Then they just kind of abandoned it, even like, we're just a dispatch company for rideshare. But I was like, when they abandoned it, I was like, why'd you abandon it? Because I know you're not a tech company, but at least it was helping you get around some of the things.
I actually think they're a matching company, and that's software, but it doesn't matter what I think. Okay. Right. The modifying phrase is the usual course of business. This is nutty. There is nothing like the usual course of business. First of all, there are emergencies all the time of every possible, sort. Your roof falls in because of snow load. There's a flood. People don't come to work. Your supplier burns down. I mean, there's just an unending list of emergencies. And when you have to, you reach for an independent contractor. You don't want to hire somebody. Maybe 3 of your people are out on maternity leave. They're coming back. So you get independent contractors to fill it in. Is that usual? Like it fails, this test fails all emergency work. It fails seasonal work. It fails cyclical, because whatever you guess is outside the usual course of business, they're going to guess is inside it, because the Department of Labor is trying to fail you. That's what they're supposed to do with the ABC test. All right. So now we're done basically we've got 6 tests so far. And we come to prong 3, which is a little friendlier ground, but kind of vague. There's a reason that it's a little friendlier ground, and we can go into that next week when we look at how this thing became a trap. But the 3 phrases are customarily engaged, okay, and then an independently established, and they're referring then to, and then there are 4 words that talk about a trade, a profession, an occupation, or a business. And in 13 years of studying this, I realized those things are like a freebie. Almost anything you do for money, I've never thought of an exception, is one of those three. It's like a trade, like craft, carpentry, all the construction, an occupation, that's a statistical category.
So if you were to ask a lawmaker in Massachusetts right now, if you went up to one and you happen to have a moment and said, what does customarily mean?
Oh, they wouldn't know.
I mean, would they just not even answer you because they know that you're referring to some legislation and they know that, well, we can't define that for you.
The only people that would know about it would be the labor and something else committee.
But would they give an answer?
Oh, probably not. They don't want to be pinned down on it. And they don't study it. They study the 6,000 bills that come in every year to see if they should act on them.
Because when you say that word, I start thinking about all the people multi-apping who are doing rideshare, delivery, grocery shopping,
right.
Last mile courier. So no, they're not customarily in rideshare. They're all over the place.
Right. But they're to your and my mind, they're customarily engaged what they're doing. They're
platform engaged. They're customarily platform engaged.
They're involved. Right. They get in their car and they do stuff. They pick up passengers, drop them off. So they tend to follow that, except that this prong prohibits brand new work. The first job is illegal because you're not customarily. And before that ride, you're not, you did something else, whatever it was. Maybe you didn't even work at all, but you're not customarily. After that, it gets easier. Then independently established. This is normally what the law would suggest there if we weren't trying to screw everybody who buys from us. Independently established means it's not a division of the corporation. It's established in some way by it's an LLC or has a corporate form, or I fill out a Form C. I mean, there's some way that separates it from just picking up somebody down the street, charging them $20 for gas and driving them to Logan Airport. It's different than that. And then finally, the third one is of the same nature as the service performed. All right. Now, this is ridiculous because in small business, which all the drivers have and all independent contractors have, you are always looking for what are called adjacencies, something that's like what I do that I can learn and then I can sell to my existing customers or a new, very similar market that I can reach easily. Always. That's the whole thing of the businesses find new markets, and it is completely normal. And here it's you're forcing that to be forcing them to have to pass that test. Well, if you're a landscaper and the guy says, can you, we have a nice summer relationship. How about the winter? I need you to plow my driveway. Here the state is threatening to get in there and say, that's not the same nature. Landscaping is stuff you do, with the ground, and snow is what falls on the ground. It's water and it runs away eventually. So you don't know it. Any service expansion is going to fail this. First jobs fail it. And any emergency response is like, hey, I know you're a pediatric nurse, but we've got a whole bunch of, people, geriatric patients. Can you cover them? Because they're all homeless at the moment. And can you take care of them and their medical needs while we find them housing? Perfect example of where you get an independent contractor to do, nurse to do something very similar under difficult circumstances. All right. So we're done with that. That's 9 different tests. And the 9 tests that's going to be applied to every nurse that comes in, working in emergency, and you cannot tell when you're just trying to get the job done for the buyer. So somewhere in there is what really captured the Massachusetts Department of Labor's attention. They said, we can find these guys. And they were giddy and they had office parties. And they said, we're going to get them. I guarantee you, this is not impartial judges wearing wigs and following British law for the last 300 years. These are people like the Attorney General. She is already, I have a little
Andrea Campbell, yeah.
Andrea Campbell. Here's she's already bragging. A.G. Campbell secures $175 million settlement from Uber and Lyft. This is how people run for governor in Massachusetts. If you're got a ceiling over you for attorney general of the state, that really helps your career path. This is why she's in this job, is so she can run for state governor. Okay, so the real killer here that really got things going for Uber and Lyft, the reason they didn't settle sooner, is treble damages. The state took every driver they could. They demanded the information from Uber and Lyft. They found out how much they made, and they added up what their pay should have been if they were subject to minimum wage and overtime and all this other stuff, and added all the benefits they could possibly imagine, the same list of 6 benefits that they got crushed with, and tripled all of that. And that was the first ask. Campbell's little munchkins over there in labor law enforcement. That's how this works. They said, we need to talk. They probably issued a subpoena, and we think you're guilty of, and I'm picking a number, but I think it's triple that for various reasons. We think you're responsible for $850 million worth of accumulated fines, benefits, and penalties. And Uber and Lyft absolutely quacked. Like, oh my God, you got to be kidding me. No, here it is. So we're going to haul you into court. And they had negotiations and they had discussions, and they were in court for 4 years. I mean, I give Uber and Lyft credit. They didn't fold. But somewhere, something happened.
They knew this was coming, though. At some point, I mean, well, maybe not this, but they knew something was coming.
Well, there was a moment when it came as a surprise. My guess is because nobody expected 175 million. That would be my guess. Right. You don't roll that kind of dice in a corporation.
I mean, to put that into perspective, it was $208 million that was raised by the Flex Association, which was DoorDash, Uber, Postmates, Instacart, everybody, to fight for Prop 22 in California on a ballot initiative. And that was the most California had ever seen, $208 million.
Right.
And so just to put it in perspective, the largest state with the most GDP and people, they had to put in $208 million there. And this was just $75 million fine.
Right. So, insiders could say you're totally wrong, and I'm freely admitting that. I'm forced to use my best business judgment. I'm an independent contractor, and I use independent contractors.
But anybody that says that Mike's wrong, we challenge you to come on this podcast.
Yeah, love to have it.
Seriously.
Hear from
if you're watching and you think that this is wrong and you have some kind of say in that system, please come on.
Love to. Anyway, that is what happened. And all the terms are going to be defined by people who are neither independent contractors nor buyers of independent contractor services. I'm talking judges, state and federal attorneys, plaintiffs' attorneys, regulators, staffers, agency magistrates. Once in a rare circumstance, there'll be a jury. All those people are going to define every one of these terms, and each one will make a decision on pass or fail. Of all of them, it's 9 tests. Mm-hmm. Anyone kills it. It kills the goose. So with that, I think I've got a couple of memorable things to keep in your mind. 9 tests in a 3-part test.
Because mainly my view on that is, and it might just be wrong, but my view is to say 9-part test just sounds even wrong to everybody.
Right.
So of course you want to make it 3, but it's not.
And for a little amusing drive time while you're waiting for a job, you can look at what you think would actually give you a safe harbor. And not one of these is the safe harbor. You can't say, oh, if I do this, I can pass. I mean, look at the speed law. You know how to pass a speed law test. It says 20 miles an hour in a school, you go 19. You're going to pass every time. 30 miles an hour, you're going to go 29. Now, you might go 31, but you're practical and you think they're not going to arrest me for 31, etc. But what if it just said slow? What the law does not encourage compliance because you can't figure out what would be compliant. And in fact, nothing is, because that's the way they want it. Nothing is compliant with this test. I rest my case.
So, yeah, and so we covered a lot. But here's a question. So this is a friend of mine, Scrabble. She lives in, her name's April. Hi, April. She lives in Georgia. And she's saying you underestimate how much these companies hold back for judgments like these in this climate.
I agree. They do hold back a tremendous amount. In announcing this to the Massachusetts market, basically, we said that the portion, Uber's portion of this, of the 175 million, I think it was 148, is 3% of their total corporate cash. That doesn't matter. I mean, they don't have to pay it until January 1st. But let me tell you, that's a corporate expense. The board wants to know about it. They want, everybody's screaming. They want to use that money for something. Mm-hmm. So Scrabble, I fully acknowledge that. But think of what another company where the whole company is worth $40 million, and they look at this fine and they go, that's like many times what I'm worth. How are they going to treat my, using independent contractor nurses to cover, special medicine in the rural areas? And so they're trying to scare buyers with these tactics, and so that they will withdraw from the market, and they won't have to have suits like this because everyone's terrified, and they could care less about independent contractors because they want to unionize you.
So, Mike, we had a question about last week that was, wouldn't this? And I thought this was a good question. Wouldn't this stop smaller companies from even wanting to come to Massachusetts, giving Uber and Lyft the upper? That's one win they'd have out of this, because they almost monopolize immediately.
I think this will stop many smaller companies from setting up shop here or expanding here. So yes to that part of it. I think there's some reason to think that maybe Uber and Lyft think that driverless cars are coming faster than Massachusetts is thinking. And they're thinking maybe sort of just pay my fine and quietly get out of town when we have a model that, passes the transportation department's okay. I mean, I'd consider that if I were doing it. I mean, they're by contract now with the Attorney General. They're promising they're going to live forever under her guidance as far as their benefits and pay structure and pay rates. That's intolerable. That means the Attorney General's in charge of their entire personnel function. So unless they're thinking of, that there's an out, I don't know. See, but they're not talking about it, and I probably wouldn't either. And the state's not talking about it because they're thrilled. And Andrea Campbell's going to be a candidate for governor eventually, so she's thrilled. So the rest of us get to make up our careers in the silence.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, you get a little cynical in this business.
So here's something from Scrabble. Well, it explains why W-2 staffing agencies are big supporters of this legislation, she also added, or similar legislation, I should say.
Yeah, I would agree. The very quiet. Both of those groups have a common interest, and in not having people have access to the market as an individual. The glory of what Uber and Lyft and all these other platforms have done is allow an individual to snap his fingers and join the free market and just work by the hour, work for an hour or two and make money, driving effectively, getting tips. So, yes.
Okay, so this is part 2 of 6. And yes, Mike already has all 6 laid out. We're not going to tell you guys the names. You're going to have to wait each week and learn as we go. I mean, I guess he already gave away next week's. But so maybe every week you'll get given away the next week's title, but we're not going any further than that.
That's okay. I mean, people want to know how this became so horrible, and because it wasn't this way before 2004, and that's a story. So we'll keep you interested. This is everybody's in this. There's a cast of
yeah, and that's what I was trying to say in the beginning too, and I want to make sure we say it every time. Is that, guys, this is not a Massachusetts piece. It is in the fact that we're using the example, but that example could have been anywhere.
Yeah,
I mean, even like look at what like Minnesota and other states are doing. It's different, but it's all kind of, it all falls down these horrible chutes. It's just like, how bad is it when it comes out?
Oh, there are actually worse laws than this, believe it or not. And maybe as our epilogue, we'll talk about annex, appendix, extra. Epilogue. That sounds like
Brian in Pittsburgh says Mike is dropping Easter eggs. So, yeah, you got to keep listening to get them all, though, guys.
This is a fascinating thing, and the thing is, we can get around it as freelancers. There are solutions, and it is, the fact is, everybody's having fun talking about it. That's a big first step. I am thrilled. But every week we're going to have something new, and then we're going to keep.
And I'll at least give you guys a little spoiler, but not too much, because I don't even know. But the part 6 is like the Star Wars episode, movie, A New Hope. Like it can be a win. All of this can come around and be good,
right?
Not have to be bad, I guess, is the win.
Right. There is a good answer. There's a good answer. And there are solutions. Nobody has talked about it for 86 years because they don't want to. The people who control the law in Massachusetts don't want you to know anything about this. But if you know, that's what we're talking about. If you know, you'll go, oh, I see what they're missing. You can never figure out what the missing piece is until you fill in all the pieces around it. Once you've worked a jigsaw puzzle.
Yep.
That's what that stupid missing piece looks like.
Yep.
Talking about it. All right.
Okay, guys, we're in double overtime again. We probably are like more like at a half hour with this thing, and give or take 5 minutes is the way I'd probably look at it. So we're just barely into overtime.
5 minutes, 6 minutes. No, whatever.
It's actually until we say it's 30 minutes. So we'll say it now. We'd actually be 12 minutes over. But thank you everybody for joining us. Again, I said it would be this week, but I've just been slammed. But next week there will be intro, outro music here too. So it's gonna be a little like way to play us in and out. So you guys come back for part 3 and every week. Okay. And catch us on the live. And if not, you'll see my community post even today pointing to Be My Own Boss. So get familiar with that page, like and subscribe it. And we will see you back here next week. Thank you for joining us. And thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Steve. And thank you.
Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. Welcome to the Be My Own Boss podcast. If you aren't already aware, we are in the middle of a 6-part series called the Boston Massacre 2024, named by Mike here. And we have 6 parts coming. We are 2 parts in. This today is the 3rd part, and it is Tricks of the Law. The first 2 parts were Crushing Independent Work. Last week's was The Murder Weapon and Tricks of the Law, and then we'll be halfway through this. So by next week, I will have the intro music set for the second half of this, because I've been putting something together for Mike. So you guys are all going to like it. Mike, welcome.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah. Mike, I think I hope it's okay, because I'm going to do it. So Mike celebrated an anniversary this weekend, and so everybody say hello or say congrats, and I guess they had a good time. And
my bride and I celebrated one of those big number anniversaries, with a little 0 to the right, and we had a bunch of friends to a nice dinner just down the street from where the Boston Massacre was, literally on State Street. And then we took the gang out for a cruise of the City Harbor, the Boston Harbor, followed, ending up with a gorgeous sunset and a 1-cannon salute from the USS Constitution. And baby, those are big bangs when those come. Really fascinating. Everybody had a great time, Steve.
Bud Soda says congrats as well.
Thank you, Bud Soda.
And hey, Kevin Hawthorne. Hey, what's up, Traveler? How you guys doing? So like I said, we are 3 weeks into this. I think they've all been good. Last week's was really good. I had a lot of comments on it. I think that it was we did go over, but there was no way not to. It was just perfect. I went back and watched it. That was perfectly done. Let's see if that happens again today. Mike is ready, and we're going to talk about tricks of the law. So, last week the murder weapon was how the ABC labor law works, and now we are discussing how ABC labor law becomes a trap.
Excellent. Well, Steve, I believe we can be shorter this time so people can get out and continue with their business. It's fun to do this series and to share what we know today to demonstrate how simple this law is in some ways and to tear down that barrier of befuddlement that people build around labor law. I'm going to talk about the ABC test and the tricks that are inside it. So just a couple of sentence recap. Last week, we looked at the ABC test being made of 3 prongs, like a fork. And those 3 prongs contained actually 9 tests in the law. Here's the first trip up, is the 3 equals 9, according to labor law, plus the word "and" used twice as a conjunction. So they're really 11, but it's just additive. So I'll leave them off easily. Let them off easy with 9 tests. Now, in order to show you how what's been going on with the ABC test here in Massachusetts, which is the testing ground for this puppy, I'm going to use 3 children's blocks. And I was able to go back to my childhood, honest to God, and honest to goodness, and I found a set of ABC blocks. For those of you who are listening on Spotify or driving legally and with your eyes on the road, there's an A block on top of a B block on top of a C block. This is really complicated, folks. So I'm signing you into the priesthood of the ABC law.
I'm going to have to take his word that it's a B. I can't tell on that purple one. I see it. Okay, folks on the radio, it's been verified.
It's been worn by 1,000 hands, I think. 250 of them mine. Okay. Anyway, that's how simple this is. So what happens when employers or buyers or clients consider the law? They think, 3 prongs. What are the phrases? And the first phrase in A is free of direction and control. The phrase in B is outside the usual course of the business. And the third phrase in C is customarily engaged in blah, blah, blah. The buyers all say, oh, heck, I pass all those. And that's the last they look at it until they get a letter from the Attorney General's office asking a bunch of scary questions, and could you kindly submit a form and validate all that stuff. So then they panic. That's when they start to learn how much else this law actually does, despite how it's presented to them. So with these 3 blocks, the first thing I wanted to remember these, because we're going to call on this model again in the past. So think back. ABC blocks, you can do this. This is how it works. I'm going to set these down, and between each of these blocks, I'm going to put a black checker piece. This is Star Wars. These are actual checkers used in an actual checker game. This is how the law is built, right? They stuck in little checkers, but they're 3-letter words, and we can all master them. So now I'm going to hold up a stack of 3 blocks held together by 2 black checkers, and those are the ands. You can put
it's like a triple inverted Oreo to the radio listeners.
Yes, right. Thank you, Steve. Time out for laughter. Okay. I'm glad to see you're listening. Each of those 2 black checker pieces is the word "and." And everyone misses them because they're just sort of put at the end. So, instead of a period, they go and those are crucial. Those have a history. That's where much of the action is. Now, this condition of the A plus B plus C tests, all 9 of them, is accomplished by these little conjunctions, the little checker chips. And I'm going to let you put this stack of ABC blocks in your head. Okay, now next to it, we're going to build another set of 3 just like it, but at the bottom, between the B and the C, we're going to put a red checker, and that checker will mean or. Okay, I'm going to set these down. I'm going to replace one checker. For those of you who are listening on Spotify, you can imagine me putting these on a desk in front of me, and then I press them gently together so that, they're squiggling out. Okay, you can imagine my frustration. I'm sure. Okay, here we go. I'm going to do the ABC test again. Not so gently this time. Now I'm going to hold it up, and by George, A, black checker, B, black checker, a red checker, and then C. Okay. Now, what this does logically, it means that someone forced to defend their decision to make you an independent contractor gets a choice of proving either that you meet the A and B combination test or the C test. So we look at that, and that's customarily engaged in an independently established trade, occupation, profession, or business of the same nature as the service performed. Wow, I'm dealing with an independent contractor who has a business. I'm off the hook. And it's true. That person is off the hook. Just like that. But that's not what the current law gives you. You don't have that protection. So here's a trick, a simple conversion of the existing and.
So wait.
Yes, Steve has a question. Yes, Steve.
Yes, I do. So in this scenario, A and B or C,
right?
Does that mean that if it fails under A and B, it gets tried under C too to make sure that? So it's not like at the will of. This is a
nope.
The way you're talking about it here, it is a factual thing that it's A and B.
Because the logic of the intro is any worker is a W-2 employee unless their work passes 3 tests, etc., A and B, or C.
Mm-hmm.
But you only have to have 1 pass now. Now we've gone from 9 passes down to 1 by adding an or. Really helpful. Okay, so now we're 2/3 of the way through. So think of now we have 2 columns of 3 blocks and 2 checkers in your head. You can close your eyes and you can imagine it. Got one little stack, 2 little stacks. Now a 3rd little stack is the same ABC blocks, but let's do something different. In the B test, in the middle, leaving the black checker and the red checker, in the middle, we're going to add the phrase after the word employer. We're going to say, or is performed outside of all places of business of the enterprise, meaning of the buyer. And that makes another radical big change. Now you get your choice of 3 chances to pass. You get A plus B outside the usual course of business.
A and B.
A or and C. B, and B meaning outside the usual course of business of the employer, or A and outside of the places of the business of the enterprise. Those are 2 choices now to actually pass, not to fail. And then there's the red checker or is customarily engaged in an independently established occupation, trade, etc., of the same nature as the service performed. So you have an employer has 3 ways to pass this test, as opposed to none with the existing language. So this is a tremendous help. This is a 3rd stack with a different type of B test. and it's simple. It's like, oh, it's got some extra words, meaning, like in the case of Uber and Lyft, you didn't do any driving inside their headquarters, so you'd be out just like that. Uber and Lyft would continue. Now they have some things you'd like to talk with them about. If you're a little bit out of shape, that's fine. But they're not going to be dragged in and be dry cleaned of all their ready cash just because of a badly worded bill in Massachusetts.
Did I get it right? I just put my equation down.
It's A plus B or
no. Look on the screen. Look on the screen.
I said, is this test from 2019 or 2021?
No. On the screen.
On the screen. I'm not seeing it. Okay. Little in the words on the screen. A and B and C minus.
Or no. These are just different scenarios. So 3 scenarios.
A and B, as compared to A and B or C, and A and B prime or C, B prime or B double prime or C.
Well, I was saying yes. B like plus, like because it has the extra level.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. All right. Okay. So now you got. So
basically, again, first impression. I'm gonna let you continue though. My first impression already is this is basically is going to mean it's at the discretion of
the buyer.
I mean, the court. Each court could interpret it differently. They could always go against whoever.
No, because unless their work passes 3 tests, well, you would change that if you change the law, because actually there are now 3 tests, so that would actually logically work. And what we have just done is go backwards into how the wording was before 2004. Massachusetts actually took out a phrase out of the B and substituted for the or, put in an and by that little bitty sleight of hand, and then getting the improper bill signed by the governor, this was put into effect in Massachusetts and is now being copied. It's an unfair, what we have now is an unfair, immoral, and illegally obtained legislative draft. No legislature has ever approved this law, except for California with their crazy, etc. So this is now, with the way the wording was, a client could go, well, I passed these 2 tests, and so I'm off, and everyone would agree, and that's how it was. So this is basically 20 years, or what, 15 minutes, 20-year history of the ABC law, and we've unwrapped its secret ingredients. And that's a trick. They played a trick to get it passed. They played a trick to draft the legislation, and now they have a law so strong that even the financially strongest and most tenacious companies cannot beat it. And so the unions are saying, hurrah, and the joint venture is thrilled because now they can crush all those little guys and get them out of the workforce. Okay.
So, here's a question. So because the ABC law has been in most of these states for what? Is it safe to say 50 plus years?
Most states have not had not.
But it's buried in the language. If from Karen and Kim, I understand correctly, it's in many states and has been for a long time.
Some states, yes.
Okay, so here's my question, because I understand that the current administration is the most union-oriented ever, but it's not the only one that's been union-oriented. So correct. Why is it that all of the states all of a sudden are going, hey, we got this. Do you got it in yours? Yeah, we got it in ours. Pull it out.
Who's pulling it out?
Well, I mean, it looks like California, like people liked what they saw in California. It's almost like, why, and like, let's do the ABC test. Like, what? The ABC test isn't helpful.
Excuse me. The California legislature and basically all of California state government is owned by one party. So they can decide among themselves what to do, and they take it down to the committee.
And that's what they did.
And that's what they did. So this hasn't been passed by any body that fully represents the entirety of California's opinion span.
In fact, I mean, for the small little bit it was, and a lot of these listeners resonate with this. Prop 22 actually had more voter approval than not.
So, right, and they're trying to get rid of it.
Yeah, I mean,
the other guys are trying to get rid of it.
Yeah, so I mean, to me, it's you even just said it's a very one-sided state, but they even went, no, we can understand why this is stupid, and if it really had represented everybody, AB5 would just be gone. But then now, like Colorado has it in our language,
right?
You have it in Massachusetts. Like it's what took everybody so long to archaeological dig this out of whatever and go, hey, look, everybody. Morons, come here, look what I found.
The unions have been working steadily for years to get this into law, and they liked it in Massachusetts. They were surprised when the Attorney General overrode it. They didn't have an easy path around that. And back then, Massachusetts was not so uniquely one-sided as it is now. So they put it in their backpack and hitchhiked across country and dropped it in the California legislators' lap. And they told their favorite legislators, and you know who they are, they told them to back this law, and they ran it through, and they told their equally bought colleagues to pass it, and they all did. And then everyone was shocked when there was a huge uprising of resistance to it, and Prop 22 fell into that cauldron, and everybody, buyers and sellers alike, passed the revocation for this, one or two occupations.
For all the interviews I did, even with both sides, with Vina Dubal, with Karen, with other people who are very involved with AB5, why, how much research was done into how many years or how much money of research was done by the current administration in California when they passed AB5?
I'm told that Lorena Gonzalez talked with, which may be a phone call or maybe a paid visit to Massachusetts during pleasant weather, that this was fine. There wasn't any problem with California law, with Massachusetts law, that no problems had arisen, which is manifestly false and ignores completely the fact that we have what is basically a tent, porous tent thrown over the ABC test that protects most of the population from it, because it's called a 2008 interpretation of this law. But the law is still on the books, and anytime the Attorney General wants to dig it out and claim a major event has occurred, in this case it's the gig economy, everybody here, then the people I named go to court.
But the people I named, I mean, they're aware of AB5, and I'm actually talking about it from those names I named are not people affiliated as much to the Prop 22 side as the AB5 side.
Right.
Even Vina, I mean, she really, like, everybody, nobody has a number. Like, nobody can say we spent this much over 9 months when we did very deep reviews on this. Like, I feel like it was more like, hey man, remember our agreement, California administration, just remember, so you don't need any valid info, right? You'll just sign this.
Right. It was never intended to be marked up. Marking up is what the legislature does when they want to fiddle with it. It's just, they run straight through, like too many grapes through a digestive tract. That's how these things, they put them in one end and it comes out the other end. And
yeah, I guess I just found it, it was one of, I mean, I'm sure it's happened so many times in my lifetime, but it was one of those things where I was kind of paying attention to it. I watched how quickly it happened and with how few people it took to make that happen. It really only took 3 people on a weekend.
It's been the same in all the states that have gone on this blue state rollout, embarked on this. They slap bills together. Some are ABC tests. Some are much worse. Rhode Island's is worse. They make it a felony so they can go across state lines and haul buyers in from other states and force them to work under, Rhode Island law. I mean, it's just this is an ugly plan that they have, and they're succeeding at it because independent contractors don't feel like standing up and saying, "Hey, I like this." I mean, I like my freedom. You're taking away my freedom. That's a taking. It's unconstitutional.
Mm-hmm.
So,
But yeah, I mean, to me, it's like there should be studies done. I think we all can agree on that. But not only that, the model sucks. Like if you were to take me on a Willy Wonka tour of California, no pun intended, California, but just deal with it for a minute because it's going to burn. No, but if you were to take me on a Willy Wonka tour of California, I don't understand how things yeah, I won't even go down the rabbit hole because I don't understand how things work there. I was very shocked to see that 3 people like kind of converged on a Saturday afternoon and it came out to be a law that is still being fought to this day for Prop 22 on that end, but being overlooked that it destroyed livelihoods and careers and even ended some professions, not only damaged them, but ended them.
Yes. Court reporters are vanishing.
I mean, and there's also, I mean, Karen has pointed out a couple times, I'm going to just use this minute to say this, like a perfect example is like, she was explaining how like more rural county hospitals they have a person, an independent contractor they can call when somebody is raped, who is very well dealt in that, has been trained on so many emotional levels. But she said not any of the rural hospitals can afford to keep one on staff.
Of course not.
So therefore, you just deal with an attendee who maybe had no experience with it and is reading a book on how to do this.
Or looking at it on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say, or on the internet.
Yeah.
So, I mean, my point being, that's an intense, I mean, like all of the careers killed should be looked at because it's wrong and the whole thing's wrong. But my point is like, there's an example of something that, wow. I mean, to have killed people who are professionals to deal with that.
And trained and ready and already very satisfactorily doing these jobs. Medicine is some of the most alarming things is that ABC tests prevent companies from responding to emergencies like we talked about last week. Peak capacity, even emergencies of all sorts. Business can't solve problems if you can't move the stuff around, the resources around to fix it, and you've got to serve your customer. So one of the things underneath we're getting close to our limit, but what we're driving at is that, and we're going to talk about this next week, is this law is unfixable. So if people are driving around thinking, how would
career theft ahead? Oops, that's the title of next ahead.
Career theft ahead. This law cannot be fixed because even if you did and went back to 2004, they've still got the problem of free of direction and control. All the tests are still vague. They haven't, and you can't put metrics to them and have get an entire legislature to agree to it. So we're going to move the plan, keep those 3 stacks of ABC in your mind because we're going to discuss how we're going to go around that problem. I'm not going to solve it. It's designed to be unsolvable.
Yeah. So you guys, since we were so over last time, before we get out of here, I'm real quickly just going to put up on the screen you guys' chat because we enjoy you. Thank you, audio listeners, as well. Hey, Traveler. What's up, Bud Soda? Hey, Kevin. Thanks for joining us. Mike, congrats. Happy anniversary from Mr. Bud Soda.
Thank you, Bud Soda.
Ron in Massachusetts is here. How you doing, Ron? Carnifage in Vegas. Hey, delivering with Ellen. Hey, Ellen. She's in Vegas too. And she says, my dad made a video to stay independent contractor. Is there a link? Yeah, it's in the show notes. So or you can email it to me or whatever you want to do. But that's awesome. Is this test from 2019 or 2021 DOL standards?
No, this is the existing law went
Didn't
up.
you say 2004?
Yes, 2004 is the year it changed,
Mm-hmm.
and Marty Walsh played a role in that.
So
And
maybe his question is, in 2019, 2021, is this the rule that was being used?
in Massachusetts, yes. This
Okay.
was the language that California lifted. And
Right, he's in Massachusetts.
who's this? Go Giga is in Massachusetts.
That's Ron. Yeah.
All right. Yes, and this law hasn't changed since they changed it in 2004. The wording's been the same.
Right. Right. So I guess it depends on how we're reading it, but if Ron, what you meant was in 2019 or 2021, was this the standard? Yes, it would have been.
Yes.
From 2004 though. I'll just email him. And okay, and Derek just made it. Derek, we are just ending up. So you guys, next week is part 4. These have been going really good. I might even put these 3 together for those, because some people were telling me they hadn't watched them yet. So in case you still haven't, maybe I'll put the first 3 together and put it up on the Be My Own Boss podcast page and do a premiere to like a catch up. Here's the first half, the first 3 episodes.
That's a good idea.
Rebroadcast them, let people catch up before next week, because there were some people asking me. So with that said, Mike, you got anything? Last words, final words?
Good. It's great to be back here. Thank you.
All right. You guys join us back here next Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, and we will have the career theft ahead, part 4 of 6.
Thank you,
Have
everybody.
a great day, everybody.